Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Witness and I'm your host, Katrina Hussain. Well, once again, we are going to return to a topic which I feel we should probably be doing a lot more on. But as I've said earlier in these programs, that the news in Pakistan just comes at us with such velocity that it becomes hard to focus on issues where things have already happened in the past and we need to revisit them, but new breaking news comes up and it's always like a perpetual tap dance for journalists. But today, again, I want to take the opportunity to go back to the crisis of the floods in Pakistan last year. As you know, millions of people were displaced, millions of homes were destroyed, thousands of schools were destroyed, bridges, you name it, and it happened. And half of Pakistan was affected. This real tragedy about that whole situation is that when now that people don't see it on their TV screens anymore, they think the crisis is over. Well, it's not, because initially rescue and rehabilitation becomes very, very important, but recovery, which is considered to be the third phase after any disaster, is a long, painstakingly long, arduous process. And you cannot lose sight of the goals. Now, in that whole situation, once again, we are in the monsoon season and there are already fears that this year there could be some minimal flooding again. Hopefully not major, hopefully not anything like we saw last year, which was almost freakish if you think about it, but there will still be some impact when the monsoons come into full swing. Add to that the problem that a lot of things happened during the floods last year, that existing structures like levees and dikes and banks were either eroded, weakened or washed away. Many of those have not been put back into place or strengthened. So we are talking that a normal monsoon, just a regular normal monsoon, is going to again put stresses and strain on the structures themselves. So that could also contribute to some level of flooding this year. The question is, can we prepare beforehand for what is likely to happen? And what have we achieved in this whole year, whether it has been on the part of the government, civil society? There have been enormous amounts of organizations and individuals working in the flood hit areas all year. We have not seen them, we have not lauded their efforts. We have been busy on issues like the war against terrorism and various other crises that continue to rock this nation. But at the same time, I must reiterate that today, any victim of the floods of last year looks towards the skies and goes into total fear when they see clouds. I know this to be a fact because in 1977, my home was flooded. And I remember wading out in shoulder-high water with my mother and my sister. And then for years after that, every time it rained, we would go into cold shock. We, of course, did get flooded twice more in the next few years, but we learned to cope with those better as individuals, as families. Today, my heart goes out to those people who, in this blazing heat, probably could get relief from rain, but must fear it as well. We are going to talk about these issues, what needs to be done, and the most important issue of them all, investing in our future. That's our topic for today. Allow me to introduce my guest. My first guest in the studio is Mehnaz Aziz. She's the founding director of the Children's Global Network and a member of the Pakistan Education Task Force. My second guest today is Mr. Anis Jalani. He's a human rights activist and also the founder-president of the Society for the Protection of the Rights of the Child, and of course, he's an advocate as well. Thank you both for joining me here on this program today. And Ms. Aziz, I'll start with you. This whole situation, now you told me before we came into this program that you've actually been traveling in Muzaffargarh and Thatta and all those things. Tell us what's the situation there. What are people saying? What are they thinking?
You know, right now, the way people of Pakistan are, that, you know, they forget very easily. So when I traveled there in the winter, so I saw this robustness and this whole joy that, you know, they're getting a very good crop. And for years to, you know, like a couple of years, the crop will be very good in the areas which were flooded. But now, as the season, and I was in Muzaffargarh last week. And the first rain had not happened, which happened, you know, like at the end of the week.
2 or 3 days ago, yeah.
So, you know, you know, visited a lot of mothers and fathers and all that. And they said, you know, when I talked about floods, as you said, they were extremely fearful.
Right.
And they said that they have no information as to if they are going to get the floods, and they were just saying that we are hoping that we will never ever get floods. But then there was this level of fear and lack of information and communication in this regard, that where are they going to go. And I asked children also, because children were the most affected, and children also said that we would, but they were very certain about one thing. They said we would never leave our home. Okay. We will drown.
Which I don't know if it's good or bad. Yeah, I was about to say
No,
good,
but it's idealism. It's that fear of leaving your home,
right,
and all of that. But the flood, 1 year hence, and going back, 10,000 schools were destroyed, affected, very badly affected, and already there is not just the flood of last year, but we are in an emergency situation regarding education sector. So we are losing out every year the amount of money, while not investing in education, the amount of money that would go into one flood. So right, it amounts to that level. These areas which were quite, forgotten, and as you say that, we like the government is so pressurized to move from one crisis to the other, and so we forget that life is happening and life is going on in the districts, in the communities, in the villages, and that's robust life. Yeah. What I see right now is this, because a lot of organizations and civil society and corporate sector linked to these areas, either in recovery, relief, whatever they knew best to do, and continue to do so, such as our organization. There are many other organizations such as ours. And the result is this, that the enrollments have increased.
Enrollments of schools are up.
Yeah,
I find
almost
that
140% in some of the schools.
What kind of recovery has there been done in terms of rebuilding schools?
We are doing, the UN gave a lot of financing. Initially, the army came in, they did a bit of, like whatever the financing they had. And then the UN started cluster meetings, taking account of, which was very, very important. On the ground, I'm just telling you what happens on the ground. You have to take account of that there is no replication and all of that, and what's going on. And then there was financing from various UN organizations, like we are doing 200 schools in Muzaffargarh, and we are doing 130 schools in Thatta. But what we are doing is that we are relating it very, very strongly. These are public schools, and we are relating it very strongly to the sector plans of those provinces as well. So they are recognized and organized, and we are doing teachers trainings and giving children a lot of materials, because by the end of the day it is the child and the community that matters. But it's been a year, and still we are finishing up work, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we don't get floods this year. Right. Because that's, I mean, like it's an effort wasted, because some of these schools are not on higher grounds. So when water comes in, it just stays in those schools, and then you have to wait for months before you can do something. Just removing the river water, Mr. Jilani, I mean, I know from personal experience that when the river water or this water comes into your home, you're left with like a foot or and a half of clay and silt inside the school, inside the home, everywhere. And it takes weeks just to clean it out, and if furniture gets wet and chairs rot and wood rots, and it's a disaster. But one of the issues that, of course, you've spent your life advocating the rights of the child. In this country, education still seems to be one of the lowest priorities for successive governments. We've just seen the budget. We've seen what's happening in that. Is it time that we just gave up on expectations from the state and work on civil society partnerships in collaboration? What do we need to do? Let's have some ideas here. I'm frustrated. You're laughing because I'm sitting here going, what can we do?
Well, I think one, we shouldn't give up.
Okay.
Two, the state is obviously not interested. But we have to make the state interested, and I think this is where media and programs like this come in. I think media is one of our last hopes, along with the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court. So
that's what worries me.
That's correct. In holding people accountable.
Yeah. So these are our last hopes. I think the solution doesn't lie really with the civil society. The civil society has problems. Civil society, by the way, is not very popular also in Pakistan. We have to keep this in mind, and one of the reasons is very high salaries charged by the civil society, because even during the floods, I know of instances And there are cases that have come to me where some organizations, they charge as much as 5 to 10 million rupees just for distributing goods. So this is like their
for distributing goods.
For distributing goods, for just overhead costs. So you can imagine, like, okay, they may have distributed goods worth 50 million rupees, 5 crore, but this is a total waste of money. This is very sad, because all of this should have been done voluntarily. If the people of this country are affected, if there are poor, then I think the purpose is not to eradicate poverty within a certain section which is working for the NGOs. The purpose should be to just fight poverty amongst the poor. But what is happening in a certain section of the population is that it sometimes appears as if we are fighting poverty within the people who are working for the NGOs, very high salaries. And this is one of the reasons there is resentment against the NGOs. Yeah. How will you react if suppose you are not even earning 100 to 200 rupees a day, and there comes out a person from a car which is worth 1 crore. So obviously,
and then they see that person as patronizing and whatever. Yeah.
Person, carrying a laptop. We have a whole brigade of consultants also, drinking mineral water, refusing to drink water with the people, right?
Yeah.
And then staying in one of the nice 5-star hotels which are available, around this place. So this is not the way, I think, which can earn you goodwill of the people.
Yeah.
If you have to earn goodwill, then you have to live amongst the people.
Yeah.
And be with those people. And I think what we need is, NGO culture has destroyed lots of good values in our society. I think what we need to do is encourage volunteerism in this country.
Yeah,
the
that's
people,
important.
they should be working free of salaries. They should be working for the sake of helping the people.
For sake of humanity. I have to admit, one experience that, of course, Express has set up the Express Helpline Trust, and we were out there working as part of our own organization. We weren't being paid separately for what we did, obviously, but we did incur costs. We did incur overheads, which we actually paid for ourselves. Transportation, fuel costs, rental of trucks and all that would actually be paid for by Express and Express employees, and the donations we got were used for distribution. That's the way we try to work it out. But, the point that you make, drinking bottled water or whatever, I used to get really sometimes nervous because I saw a lot of eye disease, the red eye or pink eye as it's called. So I would very surreptitiously come back into the car and wash my hands, because I can't afford to get sick. I can't afford to do that. So the main point is to also be sensitive, isn't it? I mean, drinking bottled water, well, you can't drink the water if you're not used to it. So that is an issue. But the thing is, do it discreetly. Do not be in your face about it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at what happened last year. Let's remind ourselves, because it's so easy for us to now sit here and talk about what happened. I'd like you to see it again. So let's take a look at what happened in half of Pakistan last year. When we traveled around Khyber Pakhtunkhwa initially after the floods, the thing that scared me the most was the velocity of the water and the damage that it did in very strange ways. You could see one side of the road would be virtually untouched and the other side would be leveled. So it was almost like the fury of nature was just raging through without any purpose, any particular... I think these are images that we're seeing from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, because this is where we saw a lot of children and reconstruction and all this kind of stuff was happening. But these images, of these people, the desperation with which people were trying to pull their lives together, I think it's important that we shouldn't just wait for anniversaries, because this happened in the last week of July. But we should be talking about it all the time. And I did make this commitment last time, and I'm going to try to do this at least once a month, to go back also and revisit these areas, to see, here are some images, of course, of the army, and they were distributing food items and stuff. It was just horrible. When you saw these aerial views, you couldn't even get your bearings as to what was going on. Landmarks were gone. And this was just half of Pakistan was underwater. One of the things that I'm very, very grateful for, I guess, was that the loss of life was a lot less than it could have been. And that was because this was a creeping flood. It wasn't a flash flood that torrentially raged through all of Pakistan. It slowly made its way down the country, giving people some time to get out. The most casualties we saw, of course, were in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Malakand division. That was probably the worst. Some casualties in Punjab. It eased down, and individuals. I mean, look, this image to me is just so important because it was just one boy rushing to save somebody. And we saw images like this all the time of people just going into the water and rescuing and so forth. Well, main thing I want to say to you in this program is we need to make a commitment here. And that commitment is we shall not forget. We must not forget. While we are very negative sometimes about what we think is the role of the government and the government is failing and etc., 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 but it has been my personal experience, and whenever there's been a crisis in Pakistan, like the earthquake, like the deluge of internally displaced persons, the floods, the people of Pakistan, Pakistanis have risen to the occasion every single time. That is something that always gives me so much hope. Manaz, this is the issue, isn't it, that the people always come forward. No government would be able to cope with these things that have happened without the help of the people. How can we be better prepared for disaster?
Actually, we need to keep a close watch on and have plans. Plans like, what we are seeing from last year and now, that, abhi tak, there is no plan on the ground.
Yeah.
When we sit here and we are talking, and then, there are provincial discussions, but get to the level, this level that you're showing.
Yeah.
Do these people know? So, just to, and I think the role of the media in this regard is very, very important. Now, to say that the district coordinator, DCO, district coordination officer, can do that, or his team can do that, they will not be able to do that. And to say that an NGO will be able to do that, and to also, I tell you, Katrina, to also, facilitate the youth in that area.
Yeah.
Capacity, we have a lot of dearth of capacity. But the capacity is, capacity in terms of harnessing those people. Harnessing, they're ready.
The potential is there, the
potential is there, the ability is there, but to have, champions. That's the way things will move forward. Even if you look at the education sector in the larger scale, that is the only way things are going to move. There is no system anywhere.
There is no system that's going to happen that way.
So that, you have to harness. And I feel that, let me give you a figure, that 50% of our population is under 18 years of age. So, that youth is just so ready out there in the villages, at the district, in the cities, in the slums. They are just so ready to be a part of this change.
That's so crucial. One of the things that, of course, we've talked about here, Anees Jilani, of course, also mentioned that the media is going to be crucial in this. One thing that the media doesn't like to remind itself of, but I will take this opportunity today to bash my own community, the first 48 to 60 hours of the crisis of the floods was completely ignored by the media because of the crash of the Air Blue plane in Islamabad. We all were covering that. All the media attention was on the plane crash, which in itself was a very important story. But we got frantic phone calls and messages from the Met Office saying, yes, we understand the plane crash is important, but for God's sake, there's a major flood heading our way. Pakistan is going to be deluged. Do something, get out there, start warning, get on air and start warning people. And I was a bit taken back because, yes, it was raining. That was one of the reasons why we thought the plane had crashed, but nobody anticipated this was coming. So the media, as I said, also fell flat on its face in the first 24 to 48 hours. Well, when we return, we're also going to talk about the fact that recovery is being done by NGOs, by individuals, but interestingly enough, also by multinationals and other organizations. People are still working. So while in this doom and gloom that seems to perpetually surround us, let's also celebrate the happy moments in life. We'll do that after a short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Witness. Well, while we talk about doom and gloom and disaster and death and destruction, there is a new hope in Pakistan as well. And that is the fact that when people are motivated, when people are encouraged, and most importantly, when people are given specific goals and tasks, they do come together. Now we're going to show you a clip here. It's going to seem to you to be very commercial. In a way it is. It's a Surf Excel tools for schools. Okay, it's a campaign being run by Surf. We understand that. But just because something is commercial is not going to be some reason for me to say, okay, you know what, we're not going to do it or we're not going to cover it. Yes, we are. And I want to show you a little bit of what they have been doing in schools around Pakistan to do that. Now, let's take a look at this because it is an interesting campaign that they have run. And this is in Multan. And this is absolutely fascinating because, you know what, the nice thing about it is that the kids are having a good time as well. There's color, there's happiness, there's harmony. Kids are involved in putting together, you know, they're painting potted plants, I guess they're for planters, blackboards, schools, and the cheerful. What I've always found interesting about this is that there's a lot of color involved here, and I think color is so important.
Flood-affected children.
The kids are not. The kids are not flood-affected children. They're from schools, I believe, some of the big schools. I don't want to start taking names because I'm not exactly certain, but I believe Beacon House and a few other schools have been involved in this. So they're from schools which are not flood-affected.
They appear to be well-dressed.
They are, but the point is that they're helping. So this is the spirit that is being harnessed of people, kids who are not flood affected, but building schools for people who are going out into Muzaffargarh, Thatta, different cities. You know, Surf has put this campaign
together. Who is helping these children or Surf?
Surf is organizing the campaign and they're funding it, but the kids are doing the work. And the structural,
they're involved in
they're involved in the painting and the decoration and the, you know, doing up the schools nicely, the tools for schools as they're calling them. And I believe now this is Karachi, so all the kids and the mothers, so what has happened over here is that these activities that have been done actually make people, I think, I mean I would love to talk about this, makes people come together as a community as well.
The different classes.
The different classes. Yes, we're very obviously looking at a more wealthy, more elite group of children. But this is the kind of thing that as a child, I was always raised, you know, my mother would go out to do social work or whatever, and we would always be with her. Whether it was going and reading to people who were visually impaired, they couldn't read, they needed us to read to them so they could transcribe into Braille. We used to do that stuff when we were 10, 12 years old. That spirit I want to see coming back. Muzaffargarh, okay, this is sort of interesting. I don't know a lot about this campaign, but from what I've understood and the visuals that we've obtained, is that now these are flood affected children. These were kids who were, they're receiving desks and tables and blackboards and chairs and whatever. So the tools to get schools together is being organized. Now this is what I want to talk about is community participation. So Anis, let me begin with you. How important is the community? How important is it for people to be involved in this, and how can we motivate people to get more involved?
I think you can motivate people by setting good examples. If the leader is good, the people will follow. You know, it's like, for instance, in America, when the president visits an area which is affected by, say, a tornado or a flood, the consultants and his media advisors, they tell him how to dress for that occasion.
Sure.
You cannot expect an American president to be visiting such an area in a three-piece suit.
No, he'll turn up there with rolled up sleeves.
So in fact, it has become a phrase, rolled up sleeves.
Rolled up sleeves, yeah.
Now, someone needs to tell our Prime Minister this, that you don't go there in a three-piece suit and you don't need to change your suit every 6 hours, you know, when you are visiting these areas. And the same goes for our ministers also, that they appear so well dressed when they are visiting these areas. So if you visit these areas with this kind of get-up, you don't expect people to be motivated. Yeah. They may be following them with lots of complaints and with chits in their hands because they need the favor. But from their heart, they resent these people, and they have no respect. Yeah,
I've seen that.
So we need good leaders. And I think another thing I would like to mention is that, you know, when we are talking of such problems, you know, all nations in the world face such problems. But these are problems which the nations will have to resolve on its own, through its own resources. You know, it's like, for instance, if slavery was abolished in America, or if women got the right to vote, whether in America or in Europe, this was not done through US aid.
It was people's movements.
It was not done through European Union. It was not done with foreign assistance or even with the help of NGOs. No women empowerment advocacy tools were employed to create this. This was done by the people themselves.
Absolutely.
And you cannot name a single country in the world where change has been brought about through the NGOs or with even foreign aid. Change is not brought about through foreign aid. It's done by people's own will. You know, you have the example of the whole of Europe, which was destroyed in the Second World War, and they were on their own feet. Take the example of Japan, which was destroyed by a tsunami. You know, even lots of countries, including Pakistan, yeah, they went and they said, we want to help, including Pakistan, for instance. They said, we want to help you. They said, please don't.
Yeah,
we don't need your help. And I think I have already mentioned in one of your programs that after the tsunami, when it hit India, the UN Secretary General, he told the Indian government, I would like to visit. They said, please don't come. They said, if you come, this will create bottlenecks in the rescue work which we are doing. So come at a later date. This is so unlike Pakistan, where one of the first things we did was donors conference.
Right.
You know, in the convention center in Islamabad. So this whole drama bazi will have to end in this country. You know, this is the reason we need sincere leaders who come, who really feel for the people, who are not interested in money and who are only interested in helping the people. And you know,
that spirit is there amongst the people of Pakistan.
It is there.
How do we harness
I
it,
have seen it myself. You know, I like when earthquake hit Pakistan, initial, say, first 2 weeks, people were doing work totally on their own.
Totally.
No foreign assistance, not even governmental assistance. Everyone was helping. But after 2 weeks, you know, this whole base of foreign assistance started coming. And then, you know, this whole salary thing, everything started coming.
That culture sets in.
That culture sets in. You know, that it destroys everything. Initial 2 weeks, people were working without even thinking of salaries. But after 2 weeks, the same people, they were asking you for, you know, huge salaries to work.
My God, that's amazing. I mean, you know, I have wonderful stories to tell about the aftermath of the earthquake, because the stories of human, you know, courage, commitment, endurance. I have one story that I want to share with both of you and my viewers as well. Of one of my colleagues was there in Balakot, and he met these 4 laborers who were sitting by the side of the road with their shovels, and they were eating chanas, chickpeas. Dried chickpeas. And so he sat down, he started talking to them. It was dark, there were no lights, and they said that they had heard on TV that there were people buried under the rubble. So they walked from the Punjab, they walked and hitchhiked with their shovels all the way to Balakot to dig people out. He said, now, and this was about 10 days after the earthquake, he said, we worked for 10 days, we've dug out people, we've taken out the dead, we've taken out some living, now we're going home. And to me that was just so amazing. 4 men who just pick up the shovels and they walk and hitchhike their way to Balakot.
No,
that is the spirit.
You know, again, Balakot, I was there after, like, within the first 48 hours. You will not believe this. There was a traffic jam on the road to Balakot, and it was almost like at least 5 kilometers long.
Wow, people just tried to get that to
Exactly. All cars packed with goods. People had put everything, whatever they had in their cars, and they were just heading wherever they could, for help. You know, that's the kind of help. And you know, I just want to give an example of madrasas, for instance. You know, there was one study done, I don't know how reliable that study is, but that study said that each year Pakistanis give like 50 to 60 billion rupees to charity. Now, bulk of this 50 to 60 billion, it goes to madrasas. The question is why? You know, why do people prefer giving to madrasas than the NGOs? The reason is simple, because madrasas are not having that kind of culture that NGOs have. The madrasa in charge, he is not charging you a salary of 200,000 to 300,000 rupees.
No, and he's sitting on a woven mat on the floor.
Exactly.
And,
He is not sitting in an air-conditioned office. He's sitting in his own madrasa along with the rest of the people.
So
if
that
you
makes a difference.
set that kind of example, people will give.
Isn't that one of the reasons why Abdul Sattar Eidhi is
Exactly.
so popular?
Exactly.
Mr. Eidhi is so popular.
You know, what Anis is saying is not just specific to Pakistan about this NGOs. You know, I was speaking at the Clinton Global Initiative on the flood situation in Pakistan recently in San Diego, and Sean Penn was there. He had helped President Clinton with the Haiti.
Actor Sean Penn.
Sean Penn. And he had helped in Haiti a lot. And some people asked him, you know, these are students now. This whole entire thing, the initiative is around students and to galvanize the youth. And so they said, how was your experience and civil society and all that? And he said it was very, very bad because they were NGOs competing for financing and you didn't see any kind of results on the ground. So it is not just specific to Pakistan, but it is endemic. But let's just broaden the discussion right now from NGOs, because NGOs are very nascent in Pakistan. And NGOs cannot be the civil society. Civil society is much larger, and you know, media is in it, and judiciary and all that. You know, and now it has become much important, and to make it more responsible and to make it more accountable. Now, in this discussion, we are missing the parliamentarians, the MPAs, the MNAs, who were either there or not there.
Yeah. Some of them were there around the clock.
So you know what I feel like, you know, we can look back and see what it was and remind ourselves and say that, you know, we have to continue doing what it is. But again, there are two things, that we cannot just look at the flood situation. I mean, like how we are linking to the education now, we need to further galvanize to extend it, because there is an emergency in education.
Yes,
you know, I can give
absolutely.
you examples of Quetta, where I was recently, Balochistan. It's in shambles. 1,500 primary schools for the entirety of one room, one teacher, and when the teacher goes off on maternity leave, so the school closes down for 4 months, you know. So those kind of things. But coming back to that, you know, the media has to help in holding the parliamentarians accountable. I'll just give you an example. Recently, when I was talking to this mothers group, and very active, totally illiterate, you know, like they had better arguments than I could ever give them. So, and they just said to me that, you know, we all agree that all children should go to school, and they are going to school, and enrollments are, and they said secondary school. We don't have a secondary school. Madam, why don't you give us a secondary school? I said, you know, you didn't vote for me.
Right.
You know, so I said, where is that leader?
Where's your M&A
so,
or
because
MPS?
you see, working at that level, you realize that where is the missing link?
Yeah.
Where
and
is
they have
that
the development
parliament?
funds.
You know, they have the development
funds.
And so I said that when they come in for the vote, why don't you ask for that secondary school? Yeah. And they said, because you see, you know, you have to, the media has to start giving those messages for the parents to prioritize, you know, the communities to prioritize what they are going to ask for. And they said, yeah, but, you know, it was, we did ask, but I said, you know, the road, the employment, and the other, the electricity, gas were your first priorities. They said, yeah, it was the first priority. Yeah. And so, you know, we have to, while building the capacity of the communities, the people of Pakistan, who are the real people, also develop the capacity and to just do a gentle kind of an accountability with the parliamentarians as to,
why
you know,
gentle?
you two are...
I'm not into gentle accountability.
Okay, good.
Aggressive accountability.
So these two, that's the missing link. Yeah. We are just, you know, talking about NGOs. NGOs are not accountable.
They
will continue to do what they're doing, but you know, you have to make them redundant when you make that relationship between the voter and the elected, because they are supposed to be doing all of that, and they find an excuse to run away. And I think media has a very important role in that.
Okay, we're going to take a break here, Mr. Jilani. I'll come right back because I'm told it's time for a break. One of the points that Mr. Jilani, of course, raised just before is that the tremendous amount of private philanthropy that goes on in Pakistan, whether it's going to madrasas or whether it's going elsewhere, the point is that is almost a parallel economy, and some estimates indicate that if it wasn't for this tremendous generosity and in many cases anonymous benefactors, then the poverty in Pakistan would be at absolutely horribly devastating levels. It's not all that great, but it would be much worse if it wasn't for that. Now, when we return, we're going to talk about just this very crucial issue: guidance. People want to help, they don't know how and where. We're going to talk about that after a short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Witness. One of the most crucial elements of any society is the fact that any volunteer force any group of people still need direction on what is required. You cannot expect civil society, NGOs, individuals or whoever to take decisions, many of which, okay, we will do food, we will do medicine, we will do this. Nobody can do it all. But if you coordinate efforts, then it would be so much more effective if you know that, okay, area A has got food supplies, they only need medical, so people can be told, go to group A, you can do medicines here. By the way, if you have food, bring it to group area D. You know, it just needs to be coordinated, and that's where the government does fall flat on its face. Not just this current government, even in 2005 after the earthquake. It could have been a lot better coordinated, and here is a critical role of the NDMA, the National Disaster Management Authority. During the floods, I found out that there were 22 employees in NDMA. Certain National Disaster Management Authority with 22 employees, and the provincial disaster management authorities do not report to the NDMA. So that is a major problem right there and then. If the NDMA has no authority over the PDMAs, then who's coordinating, who's answerable, who's accountable? Mr. Jalani, that was horrifying to me, to discover that the provincial disaster management authorities were not talking to each other or to the NDMA. Everybody was off doing their own thing. And this was a nationwide disaster.
If you can manage this, immediately after the earthquake, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shaukat Aziz, he made a statement, and maybe Musharraf also made this statement, saying that we will reconstruct all these areas which are destroyed by the earthquake. We will build a new Balakot.
Yeah.
And the new Balakot is going to be better than Paris.
Yes, I remember that.
So if you can get that clip, it will be nice to show that
clip,
to them. And then not just show it to them, but show it to the nation also. Show that clip and then show the new Balakot, which it's still in shambles. The Balakot, because still no construction allowed in Balakot, so the city remains in shambles. So
and the new Balakot that was supposed to be built at a distance was never built.
It was never built.
Earthquake Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Authority.
I think such a huge amount was given to ERA. Most of its time was spent sitting in their air-conditioned offices in that posh Prime Minister's Secretariat, which appears as if it's more located in, it's more like a palace of an Arab sheikh than, a national disaster.
So we don't like the architecture of the PM Secretariat.
Right. No, it's so posh. It's like, it's like Angela Jolie that,
she complained so bitterly.
Yeah, that she visited Pakistan after the floods last year, and she complained that, the rulers have no link with the masses here. She said, I saw so much devastation, I saw so much poverty, and then I went to see the Prime Minister living in his luxurious environment, and all he could think of was getting photographed with me, and getting his children photographed with me, getting my autographs. So this is what the rulers were interested in. So, then I think one other problem is that for some bizarre reason, that each time we are thinking of some disaster, whether it's NDMA or whether it's ERA, the first person or the first institution that comes to our mind is Army.
Pakistan Army. Yep.
I really don't know why.
Because they do the work?
Well, I think as far as the work of ERA and NDMA is concerned, it was a disaster. I think the civilians could have done a better job. I think the people who headed ERA then, they should be held accountable for the kind of service they have provided. People still have not been compensated for houses that were destroyed in 2005. Absolutely. They should be asked as to what has happened to the new Balakot, what has happened to the billions which were given to ERA. And then look at the new headquarters they have built in Islamabad. That ERA headquarters alone is worth about billions of rupees.
That's disgusting. I haven't seen it. Ms. Aziz, this is, I think Anis is making the point repeatedly that the first thing that organizations are doing, and you're with an NGO as well, there is this feeling that NGOs are really first they look after their own comfort, spend billions on their Prados and vehicles or whatever, and then the last concern is their
I think that's a
recipients.
gross generalization. I mean, it's not that today Anis is saying that, but it's been,
a general perception.
it's a general perception, and there are varied kind of organizations. Ours is working on reforms, and like, I would not say, like, defend myself, but the sentiment of various people running various organizations, holding themselves accountable to the state is very different. As I said, the government has to be accountable. ERA and its financing, and NDMA and its financing and all that, they are not squeaky clean.
Yeah.
NGOs, very nascent, very small, they bring in some good ideas, some things for experimentation, innovation and all that, but that's their role. And then parliamentarians, I would like to, to me, what is extremely important is that how do we harness our youth? We have to develop their capacity. It's not about you and me and NDMA and ERA and people who are gone.
We've talked about Sean Penn and Angelina Jolie, but the Pakistan's pop stars and
I'm
actors
just
and
going
actresses
to, yes,
are doing a good job.
To me, what was very important was what Imran Khan did in the floods. He got, like, but you see, Imran Khan is just one person.
He's a politician as well.
Katrina, if you were to galvanize youth, they will come. The thing is about organization, what do we have to do? Okay, A, B, C, like what we were talking earlier before the program, that you divide, and you mentioned earlier also, that you divide, you have to, that earlier organization,
targets,
it's not about media hammering messages or, pop stars coming forward, and we all are. Everybody is ready, but that organization is extremely important. You get the professionals
what do
together.
we need to do?
Yeah, and to get number crunches and what is needed where and all, and then just leave aside institutions, this, that, and the other.
But we need someone to coordinate that. This is the biggest row I had with the government during the IDP crisis. I was like, great, Mardan, Swabi, and Noshera make areas and give responsibility to different people.
I tell you, in Punjab, what I have seen is, because working very closely in Muzaffargarh and to some extent in
I'm short on time. So
but the district coordinator, because this cannot be generalized in the Pakistan generic level.
Yeah, there is
that district coordination level is extremely important,
it's
and
crucial.
the government capacity, they do they know their numbers, they have their monitoring people and all that. So it has to be, and they did a brilliant, did a brilliant job.
They did a brilliant job. Last person is.
Last word. Before I forget, you had mentioned Air Blue crash.
Yep.
We are about to reach the first anniversary of the crash.
That's right.
So you should raise up the issue. Where is the report of that crash?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just in 20 seconds, what I want to mention is one of the problems with us is that we, instead of working together, everyone wants to have his own setup.
Yeah.
It's even true for the or media. Like, for instance, you were mentioning the Express Foundation that was helping the flood victims.
Yep.
Why couldn't all these media organizations just stick to one organization? Form one organization, collect funds for that organization and work together. The same goes for the NGOs also. That everyone wants to have his or her own separate hat. And people, they don't believe in working under a rainbow coalition for a cause. So it's less of a cause, and more of the person's personal self, a projection.
That becomes a problem.
Yeah, it becomes a problem.
In fact, I was kind of glad to see that at least journalists, media organizations and journalists are two different things. Organizations are owners, journalists are those of us who are the working hacks. In front of Parliament when we were protesting, everybody was there under one banner, Pakistan Federal Union of Journalists. So yes, when it comes to our own, to protect our own colleagues' interests, we were there. So anyway, that's just an aside which I thought of. But you're right, the rainbow coalitions. There's so much that we need to talk about, so much that we need to do, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, of course, I have to thank my guests who have taken part in today's discussion, Mehnaz Aziz and Anis Jalani. I thank you both for having joined us today. And so importantly, going forward, that in this spirit of doom, gloom, despondency, depression, all kinds of things that are bothering us, the terrorism, all the other issues, when something good is happening, don't knock it. Join it. Help. It'll make you feel better. It'll make you feel committed. You can't change the society, you can't change the world, but you can certainly change at least your little corner of it. Again, I will tell you, if you can't build a school, if you can't adopt a school, you can certainly adopt a child in terms of paying for his or her education. Find kids in your neighborhood, in your street, amongst your employees, amongst your friends' employees, and say, send your children to school, we'll pay for the books, the uniforms, and the tuition. That's the first step. Katrina Hussain saying Khuda Hafiz from Islamabad.